Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and unpack something that honestly scares a lot of people: the world of Supplemental Security Income, or SSI. It's an absolutely essential financial safety net, but if you've ever looked into government assistance, you know it can feel like stepping into a giant maze of endless paperwork, complex jargon, and just confusing requirements. But today, we are going to break it all down. We're looking at a program jointly run by the Federal Social Security Administration and state governments, and it's designed to guarantee a minimum level of income to folks who are financially hard-pressed. By the end of this explainer, you are going to have a crystal clear understanding of what SSI is, how it works, and most importantly, whether you or a loved one might actually qualify.
To make this as stress-free as possible, here is our roadmap for today. We'll cover what is SSI, 2, meeting the medical requirements, 3, understanding income and assets, 4, citizenship and residency rules, and 5, how to apply and appeal.
All right, Section 1. What is SSI? The basics. We're going to start with the most fundamental question and clear up a massive misconception right out of the gate.
So look at this clear contrast, because it is incredibly easy to confuse SSI with SSDI. Why? Well, both are disability programs run by the Social Security Administration, but they are fundamentally different. SSDI is basically an insurance program. It's for people who have worked long enough and paid enough in payroll taxes to earn those benefits. But, and this is huge, if you're worried you haven't worked enough to get help, or maybe you haven't worked at all, SSI is specifically designed for you. It's based entirely on financial need and is funded by general tax revenues, not Social Security taxes. It literally does not matter how much you've worked in the past. Some people qualify for one, some for the other, and hey, some actually qualify for both.
Moving on to Section 2, meeting the medical requirements for age and disability. Let's tackle that very first eligibility hurdle. To even enter the program, you've got to fit into one of 3 distinct categories. First up, you can simply be 65 years old or older. If you meet that age requirements, you don't even need to prove a disability. Second, you can qualify if you're legally blind, which the SSA strictly defines as having vision no better than 2200, or a field of vision limited to 20 degrees or less, even with your corrective lenses on. And third, you can qualify as disabled. Now, for adults, the word disabled has a very specific definition here. You must have a physical or mental impairment that completely prevents you from doing any substantial, gainful work, and that condition must be expected to last for at least 12 months, or unfortunately result in death. Now, if you're applying as a disabled adult, the Social Security Administration uses this specific 5-step funnel to evaluate your claim, looking at everything from your earnings to your ability to do literally any other type of work. Step 1 checks if your monthly earnings are below a certain limit. Step 2 asks, is your condition severe enough to limit basic work activities? We're talking lifting, standing, or remembering things. Step 3 is absolutely crucial. They check if your condition is in their Blue Book listing of impairments. If it is, boom, you are considered disabled and you completely skip the last 2 steps. But if it's not listed, they move to Step 4. Does your condition prevent you from doing your past work? If yes, they go to Step 5. Considering your age, your education, and your skills, does it prevent you from doing any other kind of work? If the answer is yes, you meet the disability requirement. Okay, let's see how this all builds into the financial side of things. Section 3. Understanding income and assets, specifically the financial limits. This is a crucial point, but as you're about to see, it actually has a massive silver lining. To qualify, your total resources, so things you own that you could theoretically sell to pay for food or shelter, like savings, stocks, or land, must be under this $2,000 limit for an individual or $3,000 for a couple. I know, at first glance, that number looks terrifying. Most people immediately think, well, if I have more than $2,000 to my name in any form, I'm out. But hold on, because that is not the whole story. Here is the twist. And it brilliantly shows how the SSA actually tries to help. None of these major, vital assets count toward that scary $2,000 limit. They do not count the home you live in or the land it sits on, regardless of how much it's worth.
They don't count one automobile as long as you're using it for transportation, your clothes, your furniture, your appliances, your wedding ring, your pets, and even up to $100,000 in a special ABLE account if you became disabled before age 26. None of that is counted as a resource. The rules are literally designed to let you keep your basic life essentials totally intact.
And guess what? That exact same generous logic applies to your income too. The SSA doesn't count every single dollar you bring in, which means you can actually make more than the base limits and still qualify. For starters, they ignore the first $20 of income from any source whatsoever. If you're working, they ignore the first $65 of your wages, and then, get this, they only count half of whatever you earn above that. Plus, things like food stamps, federal housing assistance, and tax refunds, completely ignored. This is an absolute game changer for people trying to piece together part-time work or folks who are receiving small pensions.
Let's look at a real-world example with Carmela's math here. She brings in a total of $600 a month between her survivor's benefits and a part-time job. But after applying those exemptions we'd literally just talked about, subtracting the $20 from her unearned income, subtracting the $65 from her earned income, and then having the remainder, the government only counts $442.50. This puts her well under the 2025 baseline qualifying limit of $967. Because her countable income is so low, she is totally eligible for a monthly SSI payment to bridge the gap. This exact calculation is why you shouldn't just look at your bank deposits and assume you make too much money.
Okay, Section 4, Citizenship and Residency Rules. Who can actually qualify? Let's move to the next part of the funnel and see how residency factors into everything. While SSI is primarily for U.S. citizens living in the 50 states, the District of Columbia, or the Northern Mariana Islands, there are strict but very specific pathways for longtime legal residents and veterans. If you're a non-citizen, you generally need to fall into a pretty narrow category to qualify. For instance, if you are a lawful permanent resident, so a green card holder, and you or your spouse have worked in the U.S. for at least 10 years, earning 40 work credits, you might be eligible. Honorably discharged veterans, active duty military, and their families can also qualify. And those who have been granted political asylum or refugee status can receive benefits, though that's typically limited to 7 years after admission.
And finally, Section 5, how to apply and appeal. Let's talk about taking action, because the application process actually has a ton of built-in support.
Listen, you need to apply as soon as humanly possible. Why? Because benefits are not paid for anytime before your application date. So don't wait until you have a massive mountain of paperwork perfectly organized. Just get the application started. You can do it online at ssa.gov/SSI, over the phone, or by setting up an in-person appointment. If English isn't your first language, please do not worry. The SSA will literally provide a language interpreter completely free of charge. Generally, it takes between 3 and 5 months to process an application. And here is a huge bonus. Securing SSI often unlocks vital health and food benefits too. In a lot of states, your SSI application acts as an automatic application for Medicaid to cover your doctor bills and prescriptions, and SNAP benefits to help pay for groceries.
Now, what if you're sitting there worried about the sheer cost of going to doctors to prove your disability? Well, the SSA will actually step in and pay for your medical exam. This is a massive roadblock for so many people who are disabled but simply cannot afford to see specialists to gather all those medical records. The SSA completely understands this. If they need more information to evaluate your claim, they will schedule and pay for an independent medical examination. Just make absolutely sure you attend that appointment, because skipping it is a fast track to getting your claim denied. Okay, let's say you get a denial letter. Do not panic. There is a very clear 4-level appeals process designed specifically to give you multiple chances to prove your case. A denial is not the end of the road. In fact, for a lot of people, it's just a normal part of the process. First, you have 60 days to file a request for reconsideration where the SSA takes a fresh look at your case. If you're denied again, you have another 60 days to request a hearing with an administrative law judge. Now, if you get to this stage, it's highly recommended you consider hiring an attorney to represent you. If the judge denies it, you can appeal to the Social Security Appeals Council, and as a final step, you can even take it all the way to federal court. You have rights, and you have options.
I want to leave you with this incredibly empowering thought directly from the source material we're covering today. Do not disqualify yourself before you even try. The rules, the math, the exemptions, they are complicated. The SSA knows they're complicated, but your local Social Security office is there to help run the numbers. They might evaluate certain income or assets much more favorably than you do in your own head. As our source material highly recommends, it truly does not hurt to apply.
So take a second. Could you, or maybe someone you love, be missing out on this vital financial safety net just because the initial rules seemed a little too intimidating? We've seen how the income math actually works in your favor, how your primary assets are totally protected, and how the SSA will literally pay for the medical exams to prove your disability. The safety net is there. The only question is, will you take that first step to see if it can catch you? Let that sink in for a moment, and thank you so much for learning with us today.